Okay.
Welcome back to welcome back to Horrifically Well Read, Bled, and Said. Our guest today is the author of the upcoming Veil, coming September 16th, and also has an excellent story in the brand new Stand anthology that is out now as well. Welcome to the pod, Jonathan Janz.
Thank you. That was a marvelous introduction. I genuinely appreciate it. It's wonderful to be here.
I feel like we should have also said like maybe tallest author we know. Like, are you 6'4"?
Yeah, about, but because there's always somebody taller, and
Yeah.
the guy that makes me feel short is Wrath James White. That guy, he's like at least 6'5", and he
Okay.
definitely towers above me.
You're the tallest one I've met so far.
Okay.
I mean, I don't feel intimidated because you always have this huge smile on your face and very like,
The baseball bat makes it weird a little.
Right, true. Yeah, the barbed
but Adam
wire.
was saying when he heard you read the Telltale Heart, the banging on the table, that probably would have done it for me though. I don't know if I would have liked that. But yeah, I mean, you have so many good things out right now. We're going to get into a discussion on Veil and some on the story within. I know there's been so much publicity and all the awesome authors getting together for the
End of the road.
end of the what? I don't know. I'm sorry. You cannot
The end of the world as we know
the
it.
end of the
Yeah.
world as we know it.
Like
I
the
was like,
REM song.
see, anytime I have a long title in my head, every time I try to say the Southern Vampires guy, like the Grady Hendrix one,
Yeah.
I get all twisted up in my head every time. So
We can't even try with an Eric LaRocca title,
yeah, well, I
Right.
don't know. That one seems somewhat better, but a dark I become loathsome. But yeah,
Yeah.
Well, that was a short version. The End of the World as We Know It, New Tales of Stephen King's The Stand.
yeah,
It was even longer than the one y'all read. Yeah, it's a long
yeah,
title.
yeah. So I would love to hear your history with horror. When did it start for you? Have you always been a horror fan? Did you always know you wanted to be a horror writer? Like, give us the details.
Yeah, I think that I have my mom and the setting in which I grew up, and then probably some early childhood trauma, all
Yeah,
three,
fair.
I think. The early childhood trauma, I probably don't need to go into too much, but I my biological father wasn't ready to be a dad. He was a young dad. My mom and dad were 21 when they had me, I think. He wasn't ready, and I've gotten to the point now where I don't like vilify him anymore. He just wasn't very nice as a father, and he was out of the picture. It was by the time I was like 4, my mom divorced him, which was a really good decision.
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of stuff sticks with you. My mom and I lived in this little tiny house on the edge of town. Behind us was this deep dark forest, and to the right of us was a huge graveyard, which was basically my playground as a kid. Was where I played, was the graveyard. And then I got a little braver and went into the I went to the woods when I got maybe 8 or 9 years old. But when I was really small, I would play, and I loved it. Like I don't know. There was something obviously kind of mysterious about it. I knew that the graveyards were associated with horror, but it was also just this really. My mom always explained it was a really positive place, a place of peace and rest. So I would just run through it all the time and play, and I just never even thought about all the people I was trampling on or whatever. And so I think that contributed a lot to it. But then especially my mom, has always had this real, or at least she used to have this interest in things that were kind of spooky. So she
Mm.
loved the Twilight Zone.
Uh-huh.
So we had that on TV a lot.
Love
There's a
it.
TV show called In Search of, narrated by Leonard Nimoy. That was always like in search of the Loch Ness monster or Dracula or something like that. It was always some, supernatural whatever. And so that was always cool. And then she brought home from the library. Like we used to get, I remember like Star Wars score, that John Williams double album. I always
Mm.
wanted to bring home, but when she wasn't bringing that home from the library on album, what she would bring home is like Edgar Allan
Mm.
Poe tales that were on album, like early audiobooks. So I was listening
Heck
to like
yeah.
yeah, Telltale Heart, Black Cat,
Oh,
Pit and the Pendulum. I was listening to those when I was like 6, 7 years old.
amazing.
And yeah, it was awesome. So I was always really into all that stuff that she, and I say exposed me to, I mean in a good way. Like I really
Yeah,
loved
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I always dug it. So that was, I think, where it started when I was really
Yeah.
young. Yeah.
Well, first, we also love Edgar Allan Poe to the point that one of our little kitty cats is named Poe,
Yay!
named after him. Second, shout out to mom for like her little spooky vibes and being like this awesome single parent that did those
Yeah.
things because it's not easy to just like pick up and do those things and just exposure to good music and the library at an early age and I think that you and Adam have that in common that you just grew up right next to a cemetery and just loved everything about cemeteries. I always found them to be really peaceful too. I never felt like they were scary, but both of you have it that it was like part of your childhood. Like Adam, he's like, he looks, well, you're right here. You could share it.
Yeah. So our families, like the caretaker of the cemetery and our family were like really close friends. So we would often just go hang out at the house by the cemetery. Horror
That's
movies,
awesome.
there you go. But we would do that. And then one of my favorite things that the owner, the caretaker, so we were friends with his son, but he would be like, it was maybe a block down the street to get like you walk past the cemetery to get to our house. And he'd say, "It's late, let me drive you down." And we're like, "No, it's okay, it's fine, we'll just walk on the sidewalk." And then he would take us in the truck and be like, "Oh, I forgot I have to check on something real quick," and drive us deep into this, like, multi-acre cemetery. And then he would get out and disappear for, like, 15 minutes. And, of
No.
course, he was sneaking around making weird sounds and then would jump up behind us in the car and, like, no matter how many times he did it, it worked every time, scared the crap out of us, so
Mm-hmm.
it was great.
Is
Jeez.
that
How
the
old
time
were
you pissed
you?
your pants?
No, that was a different
Oh,
time.
Wow.
I think you were like about first grade, right? You were saying like for some of this stuff with Joe?
It was yeah, I was 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, yeah, it was young for sure
Jeepers
when I was doing that.
creepers. Wow. That'll do it.
Yeah.
Fun fact though, my high school, or no, I guess it would have been junior high, had a Twilight Zone club. Like everybody had to join a club. And
Yeah.
I signed up for that, right? I think that was like a like
Wow.
and I just the one that sticks out to me the most is the one where she's like, "I'm so ugly, I'm horrid,"
Yeah.
and like everyone's actually pigs, but
Yeah.
she's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like trippy.
The
Eye of the
social
Beholder.
commentary, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's Eye of the Beholder. That's a really, really classic episode. Love that
Yeah.
one.
I was like, okay, I'm hooked. Because I didn't really know what I was signing up for. I just was like, okay, kind of like fun sci-fi movies. I was like, let's go. So yeah, then I became like a fan like easily.
That's
So
awesome. That is so
yeah,
cool.
yeah. So that's cool because I feel like a lot of people say Goosebumps are things. I love that yours is like Twilight Zone and Edgar Allan Poe. And
Yeah.
just, you're right, it's like the earliest version of an audiobook. But hearing some of those things, like I know we don't really talk about him anymore because of his disgusting behavior, but Bill Cosby, who used to have some of those records and he would do some of his narration
Mhm.
and like,
Yeah, it's funny how there used to be, like, stand-up comedian
yeah.
vinyl that you would just, like,
But I think
listen
he used to
to.
have a scary story on there, unless I'm like
I don't
misimagining
I
it
know that
now.
there was a lot, but it's funny because we go to this store that has all sort of retro, lots of horror stuff and things like that, and they have all the old Edgar Allan Poe records, like, read by
Oh,
Leonard Nimoy and, like, different people that Vincent Price, and stuff like that, so
yeah.
that stuff is really cool.
That's super cool.
Yeah, so I would love to talk a little bit about Veil with you. And then Adam, if you want to kind of do the part with the short story.
Sure.
Okay. So I just wanted to say I'm not going to talk any further past like episode or chapter 2 to not give any spoilers
Oh, I'm
away.
going to. I'm gonna be vague about it, but I'm not
Okay.
very happy with
Okay.
some things.
Okay.
In
But
a good way, in a
yeah,
good way, I swear.
I think it's like the first, maybe the second sentence you describe taking care of this teenage son is
Uh,
equivalent to the insertion of a catheter. And I was like, okay, I'm hooked.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
immediately hooked because, like, yeah. And whether you're female or male, that's no fun, you know?
Mm.
And the way I take it from the amount of people that I know that have just getting it removed. Even the taking
Mhm.
out is no fun.
Yeah, that was the only part I was conscious for because I had surgery.
It's
Mm.
like,
Luckily, I wasn't there for the first part, like,
yeah,
mentally.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And your story for Vale takes place in Indiana, and we were just recently there in early August for Books and Brews, and I feel like just such an amazing setting to have it in there because it's, Indianapolis was a fantastic, and then you're talking about South Bend and like, but it was crazy to me because it's this really cultural, like awesome city with a blend of, I mean, just I saw these boomers riding their bikes, and then it was like so diverse and awesome. And then like you're right outside the city and it's just like, and then there's like corn everywhere and like windmills. And I was like, just a really cool state. Did you grow up in Indiana or do you live there now?
I did, yeah, I did, and
Oh,
I do.
wow.
I was born in Colorado, but and then we lived in California, but that was all. By the time I was 1 year old, we were back in Indiana. So
No way.
basically,
Okay.
my whole life has basically been in Indiana, within like 30 miles of where I'm sitting right now. And yeah, so I'm in West Lafayette, Indiana currently, and that's where the story takes place, including on the campus of Purdue University,
Yeah. Okay.
which is in West Lafayette. And I teach at West Lafayette High School, which is
Okay.
like 3 blocks from Mackey Arena, which is mentioned, that's where the Purdue basketball
Yeah.
team plays. And,
Yeah.
my house is like, yeah, 5 blocks from Mackey Arena, so we're all really close here. And the thing, yeah, what you said about India, here's the thing about it, there are aspects of Indiana I don't like. I'll just say that as a state, as a whole, I don't align with it politically, but, like, the city itself definitely is more to my more West Lafayette, it's a university town, so it's a little, I would just say it's a little more enlightened. And that sounds probably pretty condescending, but I think that it's 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 more aware that different people have different experiences, and I think that's a really good thing. So where we live, it's like learning is actually respected and appreciated and celebrated. And then you alluded also to the setting. Yeah, I know, right? What a concept. What a concept
Mm-hmm.
to respect
Mm-hmm.
learning. What a concept to respect science. Anyway, around us, it's like you said, cornfield, it's forests, it's just beautiful. And I will always love just the environment in Indiana. There are seasons, and then every season has its own like flavor. Fall in Indiana is like it's like the quintessential like Halloween. Like if you go back to like that Disney Ichabod Crane thing that they did with me,
Mm.
if you like, the cool artwork and stuff, that's what Indiana looks like. It's like it looks like the quintessential made for Halloween place. So I just love that about it.
Yeah. I don't know what I was expecting because I had never been to Indiana. So we drove from middle of Pennsylvania through like what, like a little 20 minutes of West Virginia, Ohio, and then through Indiana. And I was like, man, it is absolutely lovely, just lovely.
It is.
And then we sat outside on like the day we went to that really cool horror themed coffee shop.
In
Uh,
Indianapolis, yeah,
wait, I have the
Black Rife Black House Coffee.
yeah, yeah. Hold on, I have it on the back of my computer here.
And I'm gonna write this down because I've
Yes,
never
Black
been
House
there.
Cafe.
Black House Cafe.
Black
It
House
is
Cafe.
spectacular.
Yeah, it's
Like,
Wow.
incredible.
not only are the
Haley Newland told us
yeah,
about it, yeah.
not only are the vibes amazing in there, like the amount of nostalgic things that they have, all the drinks are labeled at, but their coffees are really, really good.
Yeah, a lot of times it'll be like,
One or
go
the
there for
other.
the but then, like, it's not great, but it
Yeah.
was, yeah,
It was
fantastic.
awesome. And the murals everywhere. And then across from that, Jonathan, is a really great independent bookstore. And they focus so much on all the proceeds go to the literacy to teaching English as a second language. And
Mm,
just like some of the curation that they had in there, I was like, I wasn't able to find books and other, like, I was like, this is one of my favorite bookstores
mhm.
we always have to travel to every bookstore. Anyway, I loved it. And I was saying to Adam, I'm like, if we ever move like Indianapolis, Indiana, like I would love to move here.
Yeah.
It feels like you have big city vibes but for someone who comes from a small, like I'm a small town rural girl, it didn't feel overwhelming to me. It was like everything I wanted out of a city and stuff. But Adam grew up in Washington, D.C. So it's like he's comfortable with like the bigger stuff and used to it. So it just, and then you go outside of it and then you have these like little communities and it just feels like the food scene and the art, like it just, the amount of like, there was a poster at the one place we went to and it was like, hey, do you have a good relationship with your mom? Do you have a bad relationship with your mom? Did your mom die? Is your mom your best friend? Like it labeled all these different things. They're like, just come to be and talk about mothers. And it was like, that thing of like, if, you have a hard time on Mother's Day or whatever your relationship is. And I was like, okay, where else are they having community events like this? And it was like, come sit with this sound bowl healing and we'll like go through the, and I was like, okay, this is like a progressive community. It was very cool.
That's
Yeah,
awesome. That's
I need
awesome.
some of that.
I
I love
know, I
that.
know. I like took pictures of it because I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do with this, but like, this is progressive. And it just felt like it was inclusive. There was lots and lots of things like that. So, but yeah, so, we're taking place in Indiana. And then you talk about like at the very beginning, you're going to, Insomnia Cookies, which I believe that they plan everything around college campuses. We have one, right off of Westchester right outside of Philadelphia, which is
Mhm,
where our oldest daughter decided to go to college, and you and Gianna
mhm.
experienced Insomnia Cookies. So
Oh, yeah.
immediately I was like, and I'm dialed in again. Is this only like page 2? And
Any place that'll deliver cookies at 2 in the morning is okay in my
yeah,
book.
I mean,
Yeah,
they know their customer, right?
right.
High drunk kids or even just adults, people that just want good cookies,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
So I
All the
love
above, all the above.
Yes, 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 yes. So I think one of the things that really, really grit me, because I like to read everything before I go into it. And being the fact that we have almost a 23-year-old and almost a 13-year-old. And so we have a 10-year difference between the kids and parenting. Like you said, your mom was young, so were we. And just the way you're describing the parenting here of, the kid is immediately like, this is dumb. Why can't I go out? Why can't I do these things? I want to be like the other parent so and so doesn't have a problem. And like, I wish that you loved me as like, man, your students think you're such a good guy. And I was like, man, it's like parenting teenagers is hard. And I just felt like, okay. And you're like, don't engage, take the temperature down. And it's like, it's so, so good. And it's like, look, this is for your own safety. There's been 3 people missing. And so you're immediately like, oh, you're like, what's going on? And so they're out walking, and next thing you know, they turn the corner and his son has vanished in a couple of seconds. And so that's how the book but
Opens,
ends
yeah.
chapter 1, and you're like, oh shit, I'm in for a ride here. And so a little further on, you find out like on you put in there like on average there's like 2,300 missing kids at any point, and they're like there was 6,000 reported.
Mm.
And so, I mean, as a reader, I feel like you're just building the tension immediately of like, okay, what's going on? And then the main character's talking to his wife, and his wife's like, well, all kids run away at some point. And I just found that to be really funny because she's like, I did that when I was younger. And I was like, me too. And I was like wondering if you had your own little runaway story, because I was totally like, I'm packing a bag, and I packed like a jar of peanut butter, and I was like, went across the street to the woods, and I was like, is someone gonna come find me? Does anyone miss me? And yes, I think that is like a thing.
It's a thing. I think I might have done that. I was never like, yeah, my mom and grandparents and aunts, those 4 raised me, and they were so awesome that I'm sure I never had reason to, but I'm sure I did that at some point. My wife did that. My wife like went to her father's workshop and hid all day and all like afternoon. I think to hear her tell it, she was gone for about 8 hours, but
Yeah,
she got hungry and so she came
yeah,
back.
yeah. I was like,
No,
man, this peanut butter is not gonna last.
yeah,
Right.
was it one of those situations where, like, I think we're relatively similar in age that were her parents like, "Oh, you went somewhere?"
Yeah,
Right, exactly. You were
my parents
gone?
had no idea. Like I was
Exactly.
upset that no one looked, and they were like, we didn't know you were gone.
Yeah, that's normal.
Exactly. And I was trying to say that. I was trying to tell my youngest that the other day. She's a freshman, and I was trying to not in a boastful or edgelord cool guy kind of
Mhm.
way. I was just trying to explain just how different it was back like for me when it was in the 80s when I was in and I was just like yeah it was like you took off on your bike and it was just assumed that you would live through the day and you got back
Mm-hmm.
maybe
Mm-hmm.
before dark, maybe a little after dark, and it was all normal. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just not how it is now. And I
Yeah.
think, the world has changed.
I
Yeah.
think, people assume, I grew up in Washington, DC. I think sometimes people assume, like, in a big city, it was different. It was not. My parents were like, "Peace
Well,
out." See, it was like so we wandered around the city, like, we did all kinds of stuff that, like, look back and I was like, "That was I would never let my child do
Well,
those
you have a
things."
unique property because, I mean, for all accounts, your family was the help,
Yeah.
but it was like this 4 acre terraced estate, like adjacent to family of the DuPonts. So, and his dad was like the horticulturist there.
Mhm.
So it would be easy for your parents to think you were off playing tennis
Mm.
or
Ah,
somewhere on there
no.
because you would slip out the back
Mhm.
gates and like go down into the city and get into whatever you wanted.
Mm.
Wow.
So, I mean, I would have just thought you were on the property too. All those, and then it's like no news is good news, right? It's quiet. They're having fun.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing's broken.
And you
So
said your youngest is a freshman, so did they match up similarly to the ages of the kids in the book?
Yeah, so when I wrote it, my son was I'm trying to think when I think I started it in 2022 or 2023. So my son, he graduated from high school in 24, so he would have just been getting out of that age that Sam the son is. So maybe my
Mhm.
son was 16 when
mm,
Sam in the book is 15. So that was very
okay,
fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
And then Juliet, my middle child, my oldest daughter, she's a senior this year, and
nice.
she would have been pretty close to Emma's age.
Hmm.
Emma's the daughter. And
Right.
Yeah.
so, yeah, so I think when I wrote that, I think Emma's 13, almost 14 in the book, and that would have been just about
Yeah.
Juliet's age. So it was really like it was right there. Like it was right there at it was very much.
You're just, yeah. And just the whole, like, she doesn't really hug me the same way anymore. She doesn't really think I'm like the coolest. And
Mhm.
it's like, yeah.
Yeah. Our daughter's turning 13, and I'm right there.
Well,
She was.
when we were away, I sent her a picture of you. We were at Books and Brews, and she was like, "Bro, I miss my dad." And
Yeah.
I was
Oh,
like, I said, and he was like, "I'm saving
I
this." Yeah,
know.
because you don't get that often, you know?
That
So,
message would not come to me. It was
but it
yeah,
came, and
somebody else,
that's
but
it
it
did.
did.
special.
It did. Yep, it
That's
did.
good.
So basically, eventually, they start in the book, start calling these like vanishings. And now, it's gone up to, okay, now there's 15,000 cases nationally. And they're starting to call it the nightmare because you only vanish at night.
Mhm.
And then more news and things come out. It's now it's globally, and there's 40,000 and all different countries are reporting it. So I just love, like, wherever this story is going for the reader, I think your mind is like just churning as to what does this mean? What is happening? And then eventually you're like, actually, it can just be dusk. So I just feel like you build so much atmosphere, even just in like the first like 3 chapters of just a quick. And I find that to be so important because we all have a lot of books that we're able to read, and it just felt like you hooked us so fast and just really were layered in,
Thank you.
right away. Like you're just like, okay, I gotta know. There was no like, I gotta get to 50 pages. It's like you want to know. And I think the other thing I just wanted to touch on was just the relationship between Sam and Iris, of just the guilt that they're sharing as husband and wife of, what should you be doing? How do you help right now? This child's missing, and they're separated in the book. And it's just like, he's like, I'm this shitty father. And of course we were arguing when this happened, but like, I just, I guess you're just hitting a lot of these things that you go through of just, I'm listening to the internal monologue of this character. And it's just like, wow, I just feel like you must know people really well. So how do you get into a character mindset like that to make it so immediately relatable to, shaming yourself as a parent or a husband or a father, and just you just seem like you've got your finger on the pulse.
Well, I appreciate that. And I mean, I guess we all probably think that we're self-aware or whatever, but I like to think that I'm fairly aware of myself, my strengths, and definitely my weaknesses. And I think the thing about all of those things you mentioned is that, and I know this is kind of an obvious statement, but life is all rough draft. Like all of it,
Mm,
the entire existence is done rough draft. Like we don't have time to edit.
true. There's no playbook.
No, and there's no
Oh,
playbook, there's
can't
no
make a
manual,
living.
we don't get to edit if we
You
make a
can't. You're
mistake.
right.
Yeah, you can't go back and change it. That's one thing I love about stories is that I can go back and change
Yeah.
things and make them better. In life,
Yeah.
if you say something that's insensitive or if you hurt somebody's feelings or if you neglect to
Hmm.
do something that you should do or if you do the wrong thing and wish you would have done something different, and it's like and it comes at you so fast because when we are in contact with other people and we're spending time with other people, we don't think of it like this, and we probably shouldn't think of it like this because then we'd get paranoid. But it is like it's a bunch of split-second decisions. I
Hmm.
guess one thing that made me aware of that, I did a lot of coaching in my 20s and then early
Okay.
30s, and I coached girls basketball, boys basketball, girls volleyball, track, baseball. I coached all kinds of stuff. And the thing about like I was a varsity girls basketball coach for a decade. And like that's fast. Like you have to constantly make decisions and you are never going to make all the right decisions.
Mm,
And you are going to regret things that you choose to do. And so, in a way, there's I think a connection to parenting or being a partner
yeah.
because like they're when your partner says something they might need a specific bit of reassurance or feedback and you might
Mhm.
fail to give that, and then if you're at all empathetic or sensitive then you kind of maybe realize it after the fact, and then
Yeah.
if you care about them you probably feel some guilt. So I
Yeah.
I'm overall I'm definitely pleased with the effort I put forth as a father and a husband because I always put forth the effort, but I definitely have said the wrong thing here or there. I've made mistakes here or there.
Mhm.
And I tend to replay those. Like this is something I've struggled with my whole life is replaying my mistakes. And finally, it's really only honestly in the past like couple years that I've gotten better at not replaying my mistakes. There's this great line
Playing, like, the greatest hits of the greatest mistakes.
exactly, and there's a line in The Dark Tower where Roland, is talking to Eddie, and he says, "What I don't need is a man who can't let go of the useless baggage of his past." And that's what it is, like, it really is useless baggage, and there's a quote I heard from this, coach for the Cleveland Guardians, this baseball coach. He was asked, do you regret pulling your pitcher and changing pitchers because the game fell apart after that and you end up losing to the Yankees? And the Guardians coach said something that just changed my life. He said, "I've learned to take the lesson, leave the event."
Wow.
If there's something to be learned from it, take that with you, but leave the event behind. It's done, and you cannot change it. And again, it's only like the past couple years I've finally started to develop that skill. Because forever I would just hang on to my mistakes and like replay them over and over and over. Just one silly example: when Juliet, who's a senior now, when we were at this little zoo, we had my wife's sister and her child with us, and this thunderstorm broke out and I was like in host mode. So I was trying to make sure everybody was getting
Mhm.
to the van, and this thunder crack happened. And the nearest people to me were my sister-in-law and her child. And so I went to them and I'm getting them into the van and I look back and Juliet is in the middle of the side. She was little, she was like 5, and she's in the middle of the sidewalk just screaming and crying because this lightning bolt and thunder crack had scared her so much.
Mm.
And for years afterward, I'm like, "What the hell is wrong with you? Why didn't you go to her first, bear
Right.
her into your arms, stick her in the van? Why were you worried about these guests first? I mean, yeah, they're family too, but this is your child, right?"
Yeah.
And that, like, it just absolutely, like, kept me up at night for years. I would replay that, because I just felt like I failed Juliet so badly in that moment,
Yeah.
and I love her so much. Yeah.
I had a moment like that where we were in our just like our little, like, Hyundai Elantra at the time, and we were rear-ended, and it wasn't, like, a terrible rear-ending, but Annabelle was 2 and Gianna was 12,
Mhm.
and the moment we hit, I remember I yelled out, I'm like, "Oh my god, is Annabelle okay?" And my thought came because she's 2, you know
Right.
what I mean? Like, is she I'm thinking that, I said it in a split second, and I look back, and Gianna is so hurt
Oh.
that I've yelled this, right, and it turns out Gianna ends up having a concussion from the way that her head and her neck and the way that the, baby seat, was so 5-point harness and everything. Annabelle was fine, and I felt like I just played that on repeat in my head and seeing that expression. So, yeah, I mean, I get it where it's like I wasn't trying to profess love for one over the other. It was like just a more of a, okay, this one's completely tiny and the other
Yeah.
one's, and so I see where you're coming, where it's like they were just right here, and you're like, I'm just trying to take care of people. But yeah, I mean, I think it's such a good. I just felt like I had some therapy. I felt like I could take some notes to take to a therapist to be like, let's talk about this for the things that you uncovered for me. And I want to switch into the other story then, but I'm so excited for Veil to come out because it's just pulsing. It's gripping. It's so like it's what you want in a book. You know what I mean? I felt like my heart was like speeding through. I was like,
Thank
so yeah, I
you.
mean, was it a good time writing it? Did you feel good about that? Like, like is this one that you're really excited to launch?
It
'Cause I feel
is.
like you had like a trailer out today. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was awesome.
Thank you. My son made it. He's so talented. He's a sophomore in college, but he's so talented. Yeah, he directed that, shot it, and edited it. So I'm very
Dude,
grateful for
that's
him. And
amazing.
yeah,
Like, is he
thank you.
available for hire to other authors? Because, I mean, we've talked to so many people that you have to do your own marketing as an author now.
Yeah.
Like, you really do. And so a trailer for a movie sells it. Why not a trailer for a book in that capacity? So maybe he wants a little side hustle.
Yeah, I agree. No, I think he definitely would. He's on, just for those listeners, he's on Janz_edits on Instagram if you ever want to look him up. But and that's the thing, it's like I don't mean to, this is gonna sound really negative, but I think that like that's an area clearly where there can be growth in the entertainment world is book trailers. I know
For sure.
there are companies that do book trailers. You all don't like create book trailers, do you? I don't want to like stick my foot in my
No,
mouth.
no, no,
Okay,
no.
I don't
But
want to like hurt you. I don't want to hurt
no,
anybody's feelings.
I worked in making ads and video ads for years and years. And so like before I ever did that, like I love commercials, like absolutely love story and narrative and going through all that, like from whether it's like the sad commercial from Carter's or like a funny one that, you're laughing at. But so I did that for marketing for years. So I don't, but I just understand the power of sight, sound, motion, and
Yeah.
emotion with a video like this as a trailer and how powerful that is.
Yeah, I agree, and I just honestly, I don't know that that's an area that's evolved very much. And I'm sure book trailers are better than they used to be maybe, but, like, I remember Googling, like, recently, like, best book trailers, and I was like, "Really? Like, that's the best book trailer?"
That's it. That's
And
all we
and
got.
yeah, because, I mean, the thing is there was no footage. Like, I understand that people are on limited time, limited budgets, limited whatever, but, like, a trailer should have I think it should have footage, and so,
Yeah.
like, in my son, I guess not everybody has a 19 or 20-year-old son who's, like,
Yeah.
really so maybe that's just me being spoiled, but, like, he went out and shot a lot of footage and just kicked butt. Like, I was so impressed with it, and then
Yeah.
he did a cool unboxing for the Stephen King, anthology that I was so proud of, this Western kind of theme thing. So, yeah, and by the way, I don't wanna just let that go. That was I really appreciated that story you told about your kids, just because that really, like, struck a chord with me because that what it felt like when I was taught
Yeah,
that.
it sucked.
Yeah,
It really sucked.
it does, and also though, it's like, I think that, like, it's great for you to share that because people we all I think society maybe it's just human nature, it is human nature, it's not just now, it's always. People have always wanted to appear strong, they've always wanted to appear together, they've always wanted to appear like they have the perfect family, perfect situation, and
Yeah.
the result of it is that everybody ends up feeling like crap because
Yeah.
we only talk about our wins and we don't
Our
talk about our
accomplishments.
we don't talk about our losses, and let's
Yeah.
be honest, there are more losses than wins for most of us.
So, okay. So thematically, like kind of what we're talking about here and what you said with your daughter is that like, a lot of the themes in this book is, involves your main character wanting to take responsibility, feeling responsible for his, estranged wife and children and things happening that basically make it that no matter what he wants and what he tries to do, he cannot essentially protect them, right?
Right, right.
And that's the scariest shit that someone can go through in that position. Now, were you thinking, and without spoilers, uh, you are very unkind to your reader for the first half of this book, I would say. You kind of put him and you put the reader through the position of like, what is the absolute worst things that could happen? And then it happens, like
Yeah.
maybe even worse than you think it's going to.
Yeah.
And then, it's sort of like this guy has to pick up the pieces of what now? What do I do
Yeah.
when I'm trying to protect these people? And I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. And I don't know if I'm going to be here to try to do it. So, like, were you thinking about those scenarios of sort of like, what's the worst thing as a husband, as a father I could deal with? And then just like saying, here you go.
Yeah, thanks for that.
That's awesome. Well, first of all, I feel like I need to clip that part of what you just said, and I'm going to play that for my creative writing class because just the other day, the piece of advice I gave them was you have to know your protagonist's worst fears, then you have to make them happen, and you have to make them worse than they thought that they would be, even more nightmarish than
Yeah.
they even dreamed they would be. So yeah, and I believe that as a storyteller. Now, I never do that like really consciously. It just kind of like happens as I write. But that certainly happened in this case. It is like worst case scenario, and then it gets even worse, right?
Right.
And one of the things we study in that creative writing class is Cinderella Man, and we study that's a Russell Crowe movie, Renee Zellweger, about this boxer named Jim Braddock. But basically, there's a scene where his son, during the Depression, steals from a butcher shop, and then the dad, of course, most dads in that situation would just beat the kid senseless. The dad, Russell Crowe, like takes the time to listen to him, and the kid basically says, "Well, this friend of mine, his family members got sent away because they're too poor and they can't pay for them. They can't support them. So that's why I stole this food." And so Russell Crowe like realizes that his son's a good kid and that he only stole because he was afraid to be taken away from his family. So he makes the kid promise not to steal, and then he gives the kid a hug, and the kid breaks down into tears, and it's awesome. It's like this great, it's like, dang, that's what all parents should be right there. But then, of course, later in the movie, his kids do get taken away because they don't have enough money. And I just think that it's like the sand and the pearl. It's like your characters don't become pearls unless they go through the worst pressure, the worst stress, the worst trauma. And sometimes they don't evolve. Like there are stories where the characters just break down and then they're shells of themselves at the end. And for some stories that's correct. But I think in this particular story, it felt very natural in this situation for these awful things to happen to John, to happen to the protagonist. And it just felt like it felt right. As wrong as it was, as awful as it felt right for the story, and so I just went with it. And like you said, man, like it gets worse and worse and worse. There's a scene, you talk about anybody's worst nightmare, like talk about like there's a scene, I know you'll know what I'm talking about. It's like at about the 40 or 45% mark of the book. It's like, dang, that went up a notch. And like every
Yeah.
bad thing happens to him. Like every terrible thing, everything that he has left that could happen happens all at once. And I just remember, and so like one of you, I forget which one of you asked me what it was like writing that book. It was okay, so it's an absolute joy and pleasure to have it written. I'm so excited to have people read it. I'm so pumped. I'm so excited. I've never been more excited to have people read a book than I am this one. I'm so just jazzed about it. I love it so much. But there were scenes that were just absolutely emotionally harrowing for me. There's a scene near the end. I'm not obviously going to say the scene. That You probably know what I'm
Mhm.
talking about.
Yep.
I cried when I wrote it. I cried
Okay.
every time I edited it. I cried again, and that's not
Yeah.
self-aggrandizing. That's just because this was so raw, and I was really vulnerable on the page, and imagining how I would feel in the situation. So it was a really difficult book to write, emotionally, but I'm so excited about it. So more than you probably asked for, but there you go.
No, that's exactly what, I was wondering and thinking because, it's sort of like, as a husband and father, really as a parent and as someone that loves anyone, really, the things that really are going to scare you and affect you. And I think as a writer, you're like, I need to go there for this to be emotionally honest, for this to be
Right.
effective. But I'm guessing, like you said, it's like, but I wish it was already on the page and I didn't have to go through the process of actually going through it and writing it because, that scene that you're talking about, I was like, I stopped and I went back and read it again. And I'm like, that's one of the biggest, like, double whammy moments, that 40%
Yeah.
thing where you're just like, you have no second to breathe between two really major events happening. And, it's so effective. Like it works
Thank
like
you.
gangbusters for sure. But it definitely, you look at where you're at in the book and you're like, now what? It's just such a like amazing thing. And the other thing that I really wanted to talk about, like in the writing sense, is that like this is not a short book, but it is so fast paced. It hits the ground running. Like, how did
That's
you
how I felt.
balance
Yeah.
like the events and just like it moves
Thank
for a
you.
book that's almost 400 pages, whatever how many thousand words that is. It's like it really moves. Was that something on your part that was conscious, because a lot of people are calling this cinematic, and I think we'd say that a lot about books, for instance, but it's very true about this one, that it moves in the way that you expect a movie to, while still having like the emotional depth, and going through these characters and things like that. Was that a focus for you?
Thank you. Yeah, no, that was awesome. Yeah, I think that so I never know where I'm going when I write, so my rough drafts are always long. Stephen King's equation is final draft equals rough draft minus 10%. For me, it's like final draft equals rough draft minus like 25 or 30%. So
Wow.
because I don't know where I'm going, I end up writing really long. And so Vale originally was probably about 125, 130,000 words, maybe about 125. And it ended up like right around 90, I think, is where it ended
Okay.
up. So I cut a lot, and I think
Yeah.
I think that's just it's so necessary to be absolutely ruthless as an
Yeah.
editor, because I think that's a gift you give to the reader, because I like things that are pacey. I mean, yes, everything has its place. Yes, there are times, there are books that are slower paced that are awesome, but for my stuff, I want it to move. There's a
Hmm.
great I'm gonna am I allowed to use one profanity on here?
You can use as many fucking bad words as you want.
Perfect answer. Oh, that was perfect. There is a scene in Tootsie that I always go back to in my head, where the movie, I don't know if you've seen Tootsie with Dustin Hoffman,
Yes.
but he is having this big argument with his agent, George Fields, who's played by Sidney Pollack, who's actually the director of the movie, who's
Right.
from Lafayette, Indiana, by the way, which is like
Hey.
10 minutes from where I am. But Sidney Pollack and Dustin Hoffman have this amazing argument, because basically Dustin Hoffman is too difficult, and Sidney Pollack is trying to get him to see that. And Dustin Hoffman wants to do this play that Bill Murray, his roommate, wrote about this couple that lived next to Love Canal and the nuclear waste and all this stuff. And he's saying this to George, his agent, and he says something like, and George says, Michael, nobody wants to do that play because it's a downer. Because nobody wants to watch a play about people who live next to nuclear waste. They can do that in New Jersey. And then Michael says, but that actually happened. And George says this line that I'll never forget. He says, "Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit?" Right? And so, like, in that is what I constantly like. It's not, I don't have it up on a poster in my room, but every day I edit, I think of that question. And if I can't answer that like readily and full throatedly, emphatically, I cut it. It's gone.
Mm.
And so, and I think as I get older and older, I get more and more ruthless as an editor. And because this is my newest book, maybe it's the most ruthlessly edited yet. But yeah, man, I just absolutely, if something did not 100% have to be there, it went out the window. So it was a much longer book originally, but I think what's left
Yeah.
is all like, I think it's muscle.
Yeah, I definitely agree. In your acknowledgments at the end, you
Hmm,
talk about how like this is the book that required the most research for you as well. And you've sold it as an alien invasion book, so I don't think I'm like spoiling by calling it that.
right.
And there's a lot of different research that went involved with it. Like I love especially like the section where he's talking with Emma about like the sea creatures and like how appear invisible and all that kind of stuff. How much, when it came to your aliens, and I'll keep it vague, like how much did you maybe even like have it drawn so that you can see it? Like how much of that, like you said, you don't know where it's going, but like when did you decide, okay, I need to decide what these things are, what they look like, how they operate? Like what was that process like? Because they're very different from a lot of the things that you sort of have seen and experienced in other alien things, which is awesome. But like, how difficult was that?
Yeah, no, I'm very glad to hear. I mean, that all is super exciting to hear. Yeah, I did a lot of stress testing. And I did a lot of here's the thing. I know what I don't know, which is honestly most things. Like I have my little areas of expertise that I'm confident in, but I know like it's a whole universe out there that I know very little about. And so for that reason, I at least am smart enough to go talk to people who know more about things than I do in whatever area it is. So for this one, I really leaned heavily on my friends who are like I teach at a high school. I teach English and film and creative writing, and I don't teach science. Which, by the way, making John a science teacher. really helped because like
Yeah.
that led to I think some pretty organic exposition is you know whatever that's kind of an evil word for writers but you know I mean yeah. So anyway, I with the exposition there, I think the fact that he was a science teacher that made things very organic and natural. So I talked to a lot of my science teacher friends about like so many aspects about this. We talked about I don't know how many. I have this friend named Andy. She's a science teacher at our school, and she is like a really brilliant in meteorology. She's brilliant in like zoology. So particularly with the zoology piece here. And she's and like, you know, with atmospheres, that was also helpful for something later on in the book that we might not talk about. I don't know. We can if you want.
Mhm.
But like that was really she was really helpful there too in speculating about something that we know
Hmm.
nothing about. But yeah,
Yeah.
we so essentially what I would do is I would do a little research here and there, and then I would like write down questions for Andy, and then I would basically come and interview her, and then and I'd sometimes send her the questions preliminarily so she could have time to think about it, and then basically we'd sit in their classroom and her daughter's friends with my daughter. They're both freshmen this year, so they would like go off through the school and hang out and run around, and then Andy and I would just sit there and talk and geek out
That's
because,
awesome.
and that's the thing, like
Yeah.
people get. I love passionate people who are excited about
Hmm.
what they do. Doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's not harmful to anybody. But Andy is so
Mhm.
excited. She's so excited about science. And so she was never at all annoyed, at least she never showed it, and was always excited
Mm.
to talk about like mantis shrimp. And she'd talk about like, okay,
Yeah.
so if something were invisible, how could that happen? How could that work? And then if something wanted to escape detection, how would that work? And if we wanted to
I love
see
it.
it, you know, how would that work scientifically? And so and I really wanted to, even though I'm not like a scientist, I wanted the book to hold up to scientific scrutiny. I had this moment like a long time ago. It was an epiphany for me. Y'all know Brian Keene?
Yep.
Yeah.
So Brian Keene, I read this review of The Rising, and The Rising is a really good book. It was his debut book, sold
Hmm.
like 500,000 copies. It's a zombie novel.
Yeah.
I read a review on Amazon that was like a dissertation talking about how horrible the book was, basically because this reviewer felt like Brian had gotten the dimensions wrong of this underground bunker for survival.
Oh my
And this
God.
person
At the very beginning of the book.
yeah, and this person just
Yeah.
went on forever, like, it read like a dissertation, and I was like, "Dang." I was like and so that's the thing, it's like, no matter what it is, no matter what possible question, what possible angle, somebody will notice, and somebody will ask, and so it's so important, especially for a book of this kind, to try to
Yeah.
anticipate every possible angle, and to have as many people with scientific know-how kind of, you know, be skeptical. So, because you'd rather have those skeptical moments before it gets published than after. So there
Yeah.
was a lot of that, and I think that was very much to the book's, you know, that I think that helped the book a lot.
Yeah, and I love how you kind of build it into the book too that, you have these, people on television. You have the characters asking these questions too, where it's like, as a reader, you're like, well, how is this happening? And it's like you address those things, which I think is really
Thank
cool
you.
as it goes along. I think that, the other thing, and this is something that I think, I've read and seen a lot of alien invasion books and movies, but what I like, one of the things that you do here is it's almost when you look into like a Walking Dead or Dawn of the Dead or a lot of these things, like as everything is falling apart, it does become the other people that are almost more dangerous, right?
Yes.
And like I was like, if this was happening, I bet these things would happen. And then you do them, and I'm like, every single time, I'm like, so without maybe going into it as much as you want to, but I'm like, of course, there's a National Freedom Day. You know what I mean? I'm like, and I'm like, that is exactly what people would do. Like, not that I want anything bad to happen to anyone, but what happens on that day? I was like, that has to be some kind of going back to COVID and seeing the way people behave. Was that any kind of like ways you could get vengeance yourself and say, like, you're an idiot?
Yeah, maybe like maybe there was some maybe there was some energy there that I wasn't like consciously channeling, but was there because I
Yeah.
think those parts do maybe read a little bit edgily, like you know, like
Yeah.
there's a little
Well, it's the sort of like you said, like respect, believe science and
right,
scientists, right?
right. I mean, just okay, today, my wife had COVID this past weekend and she was really sick. I had
Yeah.
symptoms. We didn't have any extra tests. So, and I'm like better now, but like today, I masked. I wore a mask at school, even though according to
Mhm.
the guidelines, I'm probably not contagious anymore.
Yeah.
But who knows? Like one of my students' parents could be immunocompromised, right? So it's
Right.
like it's kind of logical to do that just in case, and it's not
Mhm.
impinging on my freedom. It's not harming
Right.
me. Like I can wear a freaking mask for a day. It's no big deal. And I think that like what you just said there is so true. Like in this story, there are measures that people try to implement to make people safer. And they're not trying to take anybody's freedom away. They're not trying to harm
Mhm.
anybody. But as you would imagine, there's a lot of defiance toward that and a lot of rebellion. And honestly, and you kind of alluded to this, I think that would happen. I think that if this end of the world scenario would happen, I think that these things would also happen. I think that there would be
Mhm.
people who would like use it as a power grab. I think when you talked about
Right.
the humans sometimes being worse,
Yep.
I think there are other people who would mock those who are trying to use common sense to keep people as safe as possible.
Yeah.
And you have that at that grocery store scene, which is really
Yep.
a raw scene.
But yeah, and I love also that it's Emma, when this really irritating neighbor character that grows from irritating to terrifying in a way. But I love that it's Emma that's like, I bet he's been waiting for this his whole life. And you think about that for people like you see them and these things happen, and instead of being, having empathy and passion and care, they seem so excited about something potentially bad happening.
Right?
So yeah, I thought that was really fascinating, and I loved that
That's
aspect
awesome. That's
for sure.
awesome.
I love how I'm like, "I'm just gonna, like, tease it. I'm not gonna, like, say too much," and you're like,
No,
"Oh, no, we're going the whole"
no, we're selling some copies tonight.
I was trying to do that
I'm
just
just kidding. I'm just
by
kidding.
No, I'm so glad you asked all these
Yeah,
questions because I genuinely wanted to know the answers to a lot of it, and I feel like we kept it high enough level
yeah.
that we got some good answers, but we
Hmm.
haven't revealed anything.
And
I agree.
just quickly for Lenora, your story and the end of the world as we know
Yeah.
it. How dare you? Why do you hate us so much? And when is this something that so I know I saw the picture on social media of you, middle school, whenever that is, when you have the stand on the bed with you, and it's just like
Yeah.
when you knew you were writing a story, where you immediately like, I'm gonna make everyone cry.
No. Oh man, I had no idea what I was gonna write about. Honestly, my first thought was, like there was some inferiority complex. It's funny, like I know this is not on the same level with the analogy that I'm gonna give, but it made me feel like a percentage of that. Do you remember? I know you remember. So the Dark Knight trilogy, Christopher Nolan makes The
Hmm.
Dark Knight, and I think
Yeah,
and I think that's one of the best superhero movies ever made. I think it's just
I
incredible.
do too.
But then he had to
But
yeah, but then he had to make The Dark Knight Rises, and I
Hmm.
imagine he had to have in some way feel some pressure. It's like, "Oh my gosh, I've just
Yeah.
made this legendary movie with this
Hmm.
legendary performance. How do I possibly where do I go from there?" And I felt just again, it's not the same thing, but I felt a little bit of that pressure. It's like, "Oh, who's in this book?" First of all, it's for Stephen
Yep.
King. He's gonna read it, and he's my
mm,
hero, and that's enough, by the way.
mm,
That alone was enough to freak me
Yeah.
out.
yeah,
Yeah.
just a little
A
bit.
little bit,
And then
right?
Keen and Golden are the
Yeah,
Yeah.
editors.
exactly, and then you've got, like, all these writers that I admire, like S.A. Cosby and my buddy Josh Mallerman, and you've got so many Caroline
Hmm.
Kepnes leads it off. You got so many amazing
Yep.
writers, and so, yeah, my initial response was just like, "Dude, what am I gonna do? Like, how am I gonna
Yeah.
not embarrass myself?" And, but as always happens, like, the answer is to go to that like, to find that magic, to go to that magical place, and then that guides you, and you just let go, and that's honestly, that it sounds so cheesy for me to say, but there's a scene in, it's a lot like when Luke turns off his targeting computer in Star Wars: A New Hope
Mm.
and just goes
Yep.
from Obi-Wan's
Yeah.
advice. And there's also a great moment in How to Train Your Dragon when Hiccup loses his cheat sheet and he just flies. Like he and
Mm.
Toothless become one and they just fly. And and that's, once you get to that place, then it's just fun and magic. And I got to that place with Lenora. And that story, yeah, it just wrote itself. And so that, the way it went, yeah, and I know that there's been a lot of online reaction. And I think it's been the kind of a double-edged reaction. I mean, it's positive, but with some heartache and maybe some anger or frustration or sadness or whatever,
Yeah.
which is, absolutely I think that story should elicit those emotions.
Right.
But this certainly wasn't intentional. I didn't know how that was gonna end at all when I started out. I didn't know where it was gonna go. When I saw some of the places where it was gonna go, it became very hard. It became very difficult and emotional. And
Yeah.
then I do have to give a little credit. Ed Schlesinger, who was my editor at Simon and Schuster. Well, Brian and Chris obviously helped a ton. They brought me into the project.
Right.
They helped a ton and gave me so many great notes. But Ed helped me with the very last page. And I think that
Mm.
and personally, I feel like I land the plane in that story. I feel like the ending
Mhm.
kind of sticks. And that's partially because Ed helped tweak a couple lines, helped me with a couple lines. So it just speaks to the power. Like all three of those editors really helped, I think, in that story. So anyway, I love it, but I definitely feel
Yeah.
your pain because I felt a lot of that pain as I wrote it and edited it.
And, that's what the best literature does. That's what The Stand did that to you, and pulls those things. It's an emotional, thing and everything. So I would just say, in an anthology filled with just excellent story after excellent story, it definitely stands out. So, like,
Thank you.
it is wonderful. And so, as we wrap things up here, obviously we said Veil comes out September 16th. End of the World as we know it is out now, number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list.
Hell
Amazing.
yeah,
And
deserved.
yep,
Happy for you.
absolutely. And
Thank you.
where can we find you? What else do you have going on?
Yeah, so I'm not ubiquitous, but I am definitely I'm able to be found online. So jonathanjans.com is kind of the whatever, that's the main website, but you can find me on social media on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I refuse to call it X, and I'm only there for my fans. I'm not there. There are other reasons I wouldn't be there, but I'm there for my fans. Blue
Yeah,
Sky, Threads, even on TikTok sometimes. So I'm all those places. Goodreads.
nice.
Yeah, and I'm just going to be around promoting, especially Veil, End of the World as we know it. Yes, that is, like you said, that's just doing so well, and I'm so thankful and
Yeah,
so excited, and just so.
that event with Mallerman looked like it was awesome up there.
Oh
So
my
Yes.
we're
gosh.
friends with Amber and Monique Asher that were there too. Like, kind of living vicariously, seeing that performance. That was so cool.
Yeah, they're wonderful people. Monique's awesome. Amber is just like she's just a gift. Just what a wonderful person. And Josh, yeah, we had such a blast up there. That was surreal to see our stories performed, to have original music written for our stories. So he's got
Hmm.
this group called Wowtown that does shows for all of his launches, basically. But they'd never
Yeah,
done another author's work. And so this was the first time in like a decade that they did another author's work, and it was really.
what an honor.
Exactly. It
Awesome.
was such an honor. It just blew me away. And I still haven't really come to terms with how awesome it was. Like it still kinda
Yeah.
feels like a dream, like a fever dream the whole night. But I'm just so thankful to them. And I'm so thankful to Josh. Like that's a one like Josh
Mhm.
Mallerman for those listeners here. For some people it doesn't matter if the author's a good person or not, whatever. But if for those of you that do like have that extra bit of like joy when you experience an author or whatever, an actress or a singer or whatever that's a good person. Like it's always to me, it's just an extra layer of excitement to find out
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
that person's a good person. And so like that's Josh. Like, he is such a humble, caring, generous soul. Like I think the way that I mean, we're friends, but man, I mean, the way that he devoted himself to my story as much as his, the way the whole theater troupe did,
Mm.
it was just like so humbling and such a blessing. So, yeah.
That's really awesome. Well, it was a blast and a joy to talk to you today, and I hope that your wife feels better and that you don't get sick as well. So, thank you so much for talking with us, and hopefully, we can talk again next time.
Yeah, I'd love to. You two have been amazing. Thank you. This has been an
Thank
absolute
you.
blast. You all were just wonderful.
Yeah, we loved meeting you. We loved your work, and I know you're going to continue to pump out more wonderful
Mhm.
things. So thanks so much for the great talk. And
Absolutely.
your students are so lucky. I wish I was in
Yes,
the creative writing class
I
with you.
know.
Well, thank you. We
You
have
ever
fun.
need Adam to like phone in to be like, you better respect this man. I'm a teacher. I know what he goes through. And
Right.
here, or you can
I
just be
know.
like,
I'm a
can I
yep,
like snip the excerpts of Adam and be
yep.
like, this is amazing.
Do some Gen Alpha slang with them, I
Yeah,
got you.
I'm gonna put
I
that in my
love it.
back
We got
pocket.
you. We got you.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm gonna pull that out if I need that.
Perfect.
All
All
right.
right. Have a good
Yeah.
night.
Thank you
See
both.
ya.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yep. Bye.